Hello everyone, I'm Al from Valentyn.co and welcome to Worlds of Magic, a fantasy 4X game and a spiritual successor to Master of Magic. Now 4X means explore, expand, exploit and exterminate, and if you've played Civilization or Age of Wonders you know exactly what this is. Developed by Wasteland Interactive, it is available on Steam Early Access for Mac, Windows and Linux at a price of €37. Quite a lot to be asking for an early access game, and does it live up to the price and the hype surrounding this? Now if it can live up to Master of Magic, it's going to be a fantastic game, and I'll be comparing this quite a lot to Age of Wonders 3, one of my personal favourite Fantasy 4X games around, along with Age of Wonders 2. Now, as you saw in the beginning of the video, in the top right it said Bootcamp. Yes, I'm running this in Bootcamp on Windows 8, even though it does have a Mac version. The Mac version unfortunately doesn't work for me, and it hasn't worked since the game launched on the 11th of September. Now, looking at the Steam site and the discussion pages, there are Mac users that can play. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work on my system. As soon as I start the game, it crashes instantly, and there's always a crash log that I send to developers. Now I held off covering the game for 3 weeks, quite a long time, to see if they had fixed it, and sadly, the Mac version is still entirely unplayable for me. One of the solutions is to run the game in the native resolution of your monitor, which is impossible because the game doesn't support my native resolution of 3440 by 1440. The largest resolution that I can select in the Mac version is 1080p, which is a tiny little window on my massive monitor. So here I am on the Windows version. I've played a good few hours and it's an interesting game, I'll give it that. But even on the Windows version, the settings don't allow me to play at my native resolution. Now, to show you that, we'll click Options, and I'll click Audio and Video. Graphics resolution currently is 1920 by 1080, and here you can see all the resolutions that are supported. It doesn't go higher than 1920 by 1200, and I haven't selected that because I don't want to have a letterboxed video for you at the moment, especially since it's not at my native resolution and it makes no difference. I've got everything maxed out, graphics settings, Unity engine, fastest, fast, simple and good, and I have 4 times anti-aliasing supported. I can run 8 times, but I have noticed no difference in improvement considering the tiny resolution on a window, and for the drop in performance it's just not worth it. Everything else is maxed out, as you can see. Going to the input, it's got mouse selection, Master of Magic Light, left click to select, left click to act, unlike other games where you right click. Gameplay, every 5th turn there's autosave, basic information here. Now the game is quite unique, it's got arena modes, and if we go in here you can select your arena, clicking that, and then you can select your army along with the enemy's army and you can battle out to see how the game plays. Now unlike Age of Wonders, when your city is under siege you just go to an arena like this. Your city, its walls and the buildings aren't there. You can't use it as a tactical strategic map to hide behind walls, throw down oil, and they don't have to break down any walls to get at you. The other misgivings I have about this game is it's quite slow. And it's not slow in the fact that it's a fun, slow-based game like Age of Wonders where you can take your time. It's just slow. Hours and turns and very little gets done. But without further ado, let's get into the single player and show you what you can do. Now, running the game on a massive world is fine, the same with the opponents, but trust me, you don't want to do that. The game generates an awful lot of independent, wandering characters. Each of them takes a turn to move, which means if you've got 100 or 50 of them running around, each of them has to take a turn. So you might as well grab a book, go get dinner, and come back, and hopefully that turn would have ended. Now, these are the prime worlds and the types. Prime, which is normal earth plane, material, an air plane, and the shadow plane. As you can see, they all have differences in what they do. Prime material plane is a default starting realm. Air consists of air islands, floating clouds, extra gold but negative production, and shadow is extra power, negative food. It's a very interesting thing. Now here you can select what you want. If you want these two added as well, we'll keep those deselected. And then you can select if you want Pangea, 2 continents, 3 continents, and islands. If you've played Civilization or any 4X game that's land-based instead of a space age one, you know exactly what this game has in store for you. You can select your faction. At the moment there are only 4. The High Men, Humans, the Unhallowed, the Undead, Grey Elves, Elves, and Draconians. Now you can create your own character, or wizard, but you can't select your own portrait, and then you've got the different spheres of magic and their disciplines. Or you can simply select a predetermined one. They're quite fun, and I do like the spell combinations and the varied amounts of them. It makes for an interesting game indeed. But I already have a saved game, so let's get in there, shall we? Now, what I meant by the game is slow is in the sense, if you've played Civilization 5, you know you can set the game to an epic time scale, which means things take a lot of turns to get done, and it doesn't really do anything except slow down the progression of the game, because a unit could take 100 turns to build, which in my sense is absolutely pointless, entirely pointless. Now if you look at the bottom right corner, you'll see I'm at turn 108. Turn 108, and I'm still in a starting area town with no walls whatsoever. And my influence here has not increased. I've barely explored at all. You can see the minimap there. The game takes a horrifying long time to get anything done. What you'll also notice in the bottom right corner is it says development build. Now remember, this is early access. The game is still being developed and things change an awful lot, which is one of the misgivings I have about it, because the Mac version just doesn't work for me at all. It instantly crashes, and as such I simply can't recommend that to any Mac gamer that wants to play the game in OS X. But if you have a virtual machine such as Parallels, or if you have Boot Camp installed, fire away. You can have a look here and see if this is what you want. Now looking at the top right, simple resources, gold, food, and mana. We've all known these before. It's the basic 3 attributes that are holy trinity to any fantasy game. Now we'll right click to get into the town, and you can see the same things there, but each town, unlike other games, starts with a militia. These are pre-generated combat characters that are only in cities. You can't move them out, but they are always there to defend it. So even if you don't have an actual army unit stationed, these units are always there. I have 2 militia guards, and you can see there are 2 archers. You can also see my other units stationed here. It's a very interesting screen. You can see our income for gold, power, food, research, and production. Now this one, NA, is negative energy. Instead of food, the undead have negative energy. The more negative energy in the area, the more undead. Now looking there, we also have a population, and it's growing quite quickly. But unlike Age of Wonders, your city doesn't spawn into Metropolis and kind of gets nicer and bigger looking. This is kind of what you get with little units popping up here in little buildings. Now you can use production as an undead to actually build things quicker, but if it's any other race, you have to use gold to purchase something. You can also see your queue here, and you can scroll through it by simply clicking and dragging. Here we have farmers. Each farmer produces 2 food and 0.5 production per turn. You must have enough farmers to harvest enough food to feed the city's population at all times. Now I'll notice it's got a +6. That means there are 6 farmers I can assign to something else, such as craftsmen for production or sages for research. Doing so will decrease my food income but increase the respective areas. Now you have to be very careful. If you drop your food income too low, your population starts to starve and your army starts to desert. And you get these rebels. Rebels appear when unrest reaches a certain level. Your city gets more unrestful as they run out of money and food, so you have to be very careful. Now remember I said the game is quite slow? Well, this is why. These are my production tabs for building any building. Look at the turns. If I want to build city walls, not even amazing ones, just city walls, 97 turns. If I want an armory, 25 turns. Now remember, I'm 108 turns into the game, and just look at that. Now I can increase production by sacrificing food, but it doesn't actually speed it up that much. You can see I can drop it there, but I have to drop all my special farmers, which means my people essentially starve, just to get the turns into a reasonable amount, such as Age of Wonders 3 and Civilization, at a fun game speed. I find that totally unacceptable, and the fact that the Mac version is simply unplayable. And I don't know what the Linux version is like, but if it's anything like this, I pity the people that bought into it. €37 is quite a lot. Even selecting units take quite a bit, but they're much better. 2 units 2 turns per unit isn't so bad for an archer. You can see their upkeep in gold and food. And pioneers are essentially settlers. I don't know what I call the pioneers, but the nice thing is they can also fight in combat. Unfortunately, they're horrifically weak. Now, unlike other games, you don't want to expand too quickly. I have tried it, and the independent wandering armies will ransack you and take over as soon as they can. Opening the magic spellbook here, you can see your magical power is divided into 3 areas: spellcraft, research and mana. And you can change these orbs. They have to balance out to some extent by simply clicking on it. If I click spellcraft to the max, I won't have any points in mana, which is kind of pointless because then you can't cast spells. Dropping it down here balances them all out again. It's quite a handy little system, and I do like it quite a bit. Clicking on casting, self-explanatory, it shows you the mana and casting cost of the spells. If you want to know more, you simply click the little information tab and it shows it there. Now you have your global spells here, which is everything you can cast, but then you also have your pre-selected attributes and what they do for certain categories. Quite fun indeed. And then you have your different spheres of magic, which you can select when you create your own wizard or have a predetermined one. You can also see I'm researching good luck. Researching is the same as an Age of Wonders, so if you know what that's like, you know what this is like. Quite fun. Crafting, similar to your Age of Wonders 3, again you can craft your own unique magical items, which is rather nice. You can also see where you can summon items to or magical spells. Alchemy is actually a really interesting feature, and I do like it quite a lot in this game. You have the option to change mana to gold or gold to mana, meaning if you have an excess of one, you can easily change it into the other. By simply clicking change, you swap between them, and by clicking on the bar, you can determine how much gold or mana is transmuted. Very nice. And then there is the enchantments where you can enchant certain areas. You can see my character Ariel has enchanted Tranquility. I cast that on my city. A city is enveloped in a soothing aura and unrest is lowered by 20%. This was in direct response to a lunar eclipse which caused unrest. My people are very superstitious, they are elves after all, and they got a bit scared to say the least. But without further ado, let's end our turn. Now because I'm playing on a small map with only 2 opponents, it changes quite rapidly, but I want to show you some combat. Now we've got a special event going on. Blue Moon. The mystical blue moon rises over the world. Sages all over the world rejoice. Research has doubled. Now the placement of cities is a bit peculiar. I'm elves stuck in a desert. Not the nicest. Now if I click on my city, you can see my stationed units. To deselect them or split them into separate armies, I simply click and drag one down to that little box. Once there, I click to the adjacent tile, and there they are. You can see the map is actually completely covered. Absolutely covered in these random buildings, glowing things, all sorts of things. There are a lot of interactive things to do. These are huts that have units, spells, loot, dungeons, all sorts of things. Right clicking and selecting that. The Tomb of the Forgotten Sorcerer. Possible guardians. It looks extremely deadly. It shows you possible rewards, the possible enemies, and if you're gonna make it or not. And same with this dungeon here. This witch's hut. And this bandit camp. Now it's advisable to clear them out. Just like any other 4X game, these things can spawn independents and they can kinda mess you up. The same with independent cities. But I'm going to attack one just to show you what the combat is like. So let's end our turn. And if you haven't noticed, it kind of flashed up there saying roaming's turn. Roaming are these independent bandits that just wander the world, causing trouble for everyone. Now let's get in and attack. Click it again and we can interact. Now, you can let the computer do it, or you can do it yourselves. We'll be doing it ourselves to show you what it's like after all. And here you have the combat map. Unfortunately, the arrow keys which pan the world map around in the overview strategic view doesn't work here. You have to have right click enabled to turn and middle mouse button hold and drag to move it around. It is quite strange and I obviously don't like it very much. Your characters also have a massive range, as you can see, and they have the ability to somehow shoot through rocks. It's not my favorite map. I obviously don't like this. These are the arenas I spoke about right in the beginning. But let's cast a spell. What shall we do? Shooting stars is always fun. clicking it, you can also infuse it with extra mana to make it very powerful. We shan't be doing that, don't want to waste too much mana. But as you can see, these enemies here, we have some swordsmen, very powerful, and spearmen, which are the basic starter units, so we'll get rid of these swordsmen if possible. 1 damage. Not very nice, they did block that. Now in the top right you can see my little FPS, 50. Strangely enough, the game usually runs much higher, 70s to 80s on average when I'm not recording. But even then, if you enter the arena, your FPS drops significantly. I mean, a 30 FPS drop is quite a bit, and I don't like that. Why would anyone like that? So let's see if we can hit these guys from a bit further away. Oh, a critical hit, very nice. On an army unit shows all the attributes on the side, very similar to other games. Now let's see. Blessed weapon, we'll cast that here on the archers. We want them to do as much damage as possible before these enemies get in too close. Alright. Let's see if we can hit them again. Oops, right clicked accidentally. Now you can right click an enemy to select their abilities, skills, and attack defense to see what they're made of really. Let's get in there, see if you can do some extra damage to them. Oh, perfect, 34. We'll move these druids back because they're a very basic unit and not very powerful. Get some shooting stars and we'll cast it on the spearmen. We've already weakened swordsmen significantly. Let's pan this around so we can get a bit of a better view. Now in Age of Wonders, if my units were behind that rock, it would have shielded them from missile attacks. Sadly here, it doesn't do that at all, and it's a bit disappointing to say the least. Overall the game is quite fun, it's a very good 4X, a lot of micromanagement needed, but it is extremely slow. As I've shown you, the turn rate to get anything done is astronomical, and personally I'm not a fan of that. I don't mind a slow game, but this is unfortunately simply just too slow. Just too slow. I can't enjoy this, and that is rather unfortunate. And the fact that I'm a Mac Games journalist, quotation marks to some extent, I do like to cover Mac Games and show you if they're worth it or not. As a Mac game, and it being completely unplayable for me, renders it a bit... it's just not worth it as a Mac buyer. I simply can't recommend that, but if you have a bootcamp version installed for Windows or if Parallels, you can certainly have a look at it. But at €37, the investment is simply too much for an early access game that simply doesn't work in your native system on Mac OS X. Couple this with the very, very slow gameplay, I simply can't recommend this yet. I do recommend you do have a look at it, keep an eye on it. You can follow it. With Steam's new feature, you can actually add it to a queue to see if you want to play it later, and I would definitely recommend you do that. It is very fun, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that, especially if you're a fan of 4X games, but at the moment, I find that Age of Wonders 3 is a much better buy, even though it doesn't have a native Mac version yet. But then again, the Mac version of this doesn't work for me at all, so either way, you're in the same predicament really. But Triumph Studios have promised the Mac version, and there was originally supposed to launch with the Golden Realms expansion pack. Now one other thing I want to show you here is diplomacy. I haven't met any other sorcerers yet, but if you've played Civilization, you know exactly what to expect. It's very similar indeed. The graphics, quite nice. You've probably made up your mind on if you like it or not, considering it's maxed out. And it's a fun game. You can spend hours playing it, easily if you're a 4X fan. The only problem is that in those hours, you will get very, very little done. And as such, I simply can't recommend anyone buying this at this moment. I have sent crash reports to the developer with very little feedback. They are working on it actively. That's what they assure me. And of course they are. It's an early access game. You can see the progress they're making with the builds they're putting out. And I'm sure this game, when it's done, is going to be fantastic. But at the moment, I simply can't recommend it as an early access game, especially for my lovely Mac viewers and gamers. Simply for the fact that it doesn't run for me on Mac OS X at all. Not even once. I got about 2 minutes into it, clicked next turn, and it crashed instantly, and that's the furthest I gotten, and that was on the launch on the 11th of September. So there you have it, folks. This is my first impression, Worlds of Magic. Not as quick as I might have liked, I've spoken quite a lot in detail about it. But the fact that its performance isn't great, it doesn't work on our Mac, I simply can't recommend it on that alone. But other than that, it's a good 4X. If you have a Windows version installed, knock yourself out. I can't speak for the Linux client at all, I haven't tried it, even in the slightest. But unfortunately, considering its slow pace, it's just not my type of 4X game. 115 turns, and not much has happened at all. Well folks, I do hope you enjoyed watching my first impression of Worlds of Magic, and if this looks like your type of game, even with its little issues, I recommend you have a look at it on Steam, see what their progress is like, follow their queue on it, see where they're going with it, and if it looks like something worth investing in, go for it. But €37 is quite a bit. And folks, if you did like this video and you want to see more Mac gaming coverage, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. October is going to be an amazing month on Mac gaming. Trust me on that, folks. There's going to be some big AAA hitters coming soon. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. And check back later. I'm Valentyn from alvalentyn.co. And see you later, everyone.